All right, everybody, shalom and welcome to the Yishai Fleisher show here on my Facebook page and on my YouTube as well, and on the Land of Israel network on our podcast there. I've got a picture up of Rashida Tlaib and a dog. We'll talk about that just in a second when we have Rabbi Mike Feuer join us on the program today. Before I do, I have to apologize for my long hair. I want to explain just for a second. Today is Lad Be'omer, right? The 34th day of the Omer. And according to both Ashkenazim and Sfaradim, you could already get a haircut today. And according to Ashkenazim, you could get a haircut on Lag Be'omer, but I did not get a haircut yesterday on Lag Be'omer. And that is because a Jew, a soldier, was killed yesterday. One could even say maybe murdered, or maybe you can't say that because it was in a line of battle. But with terrorists, so I don't know if it was a murder, but it was definitely a death. And so yesterday, this amazing soldier, his name is, and I have a way of remembering his name, Amit. Amit means friend or colleague. And Ben Yigal is son of he who will redeem, son of the Redeemer. And so that he's one of us, Amit, that he's just like us, and he was in Sayeret Golani, in the elite force of Golani. But so he's just one of us. He's like an awesome Israeli fighting for the rights of Jewish people in the land of Israel. And then Ben Yigal is that he's the son of kind of a redemption that should come, that's waiting to come, but was either stymied yesterday by this murder somewhat, or not, or maybe there was something very special in his kind of death yesterday that's somehow going to help us come to a better consciousness. Either way, it hurt my Lag BaOmer happiness. You're supposed to be happy on Lag BaOmer. I heard it a little bit during the daytime, so I decided I can't, even though I wanted to get a haircut yesterday, and I'm legally allowed to get a haircut according to Jewish Ashkenazi law, even on Lag BaOmer. I just couldn't do it while he was not yet buried. So that's what happened yesterday. So that's my apology. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I'm also looking forward to hearing from Rabbi Mike Feuer, who is with us right now. Rabbi Mike, welcome to the show.
Hi, Yishai. It's good to see you.
Oh, hold on one second. Let me change where the audio is coming in. I'm sorry about that. I forgot that I have to switch it into different headphones. Okay, here we go. Good.
You hear me?
Rabbi,
you hear me now?
Yeah, you sound awesome and great. Thank you very much for joining me today.
That.
Rabbi Mike Feuer is a regular on the show, and he is also the host and creator of his own show called The Jewish Story, and it's found at jewishstory.co, and all his other stuff is at facebook.com/Rav Mike. And Rav Mike, we have an awesome stuff to discuss today.
It's
awesome
big, double Parsha. The world
double
is
Parsha
once again
right.
Coming to a boil. So yeah,
right. And
what
we're finishing off the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus, with a rage and fury. So I put up a banner here. It says we're going to study Parshot Behar-Bechukotai. I wrote it in Hebrew on purpose, even though a lot of our audience is English speaking. I just thought to myself, everybody's got to learn to read Hebrew a little bit. So Parshot are the Torah portions, plural, Behar-Bechukotai. Before we get to it, I want to talk to you about something that I found to be quite amazing, which was a photo that was put up by Congresswoman Tlaib, Rashida Tlaib. One second, what did I do? There it is. There's the picture itself. Let's just see it. All right, let's take off the Behar-Bechukotai sign. This is an incredible photo that she posted up, and she writes, "Happy World Kafiyah Day." Kafiyah is the traditional Arab scarf type thing or headdress, right? And she's wearing it like a scarf now. "It is a day to raise awareness of the Palestinian struggle, the Nakba Day, and to celebrate the beautiful Palestinian culture at Kafiyah Day." Now, the picture itself is like the cover of Rolling Stone type thing, right? It's like a totally incredible photo. And I think that some people, even my own wife, said to me, who's pretty astute on these things, says to me that she didn't catch what I was pointing out to her, which is this, in my opinion, what this picture means. It's all about imagery here, and the imagery is Islam is dominating the poodle or pug United States. And so you got two images on the image. The dog is obviously some people think it's ugly, other people think it's cute. I happen to think it's
Either
cute.
way, it's subservient.
Right, exactly. Exactly right. That's right. It's subservient, and it's like it's subservient, but it's also, even its cuteness is a type of pathetic cuteness. It's not like a strong cuteness. It's a silly, kind of dog.
Goofy dog. It's a
goofy dog. That's right. He's a goofy dog, not Goofy, who's not exactly a dog, but Goofy, a goofy dog.
Not go there.
And it's so obvious now. The trick of the picture is her facial expression, that it's like really like she's having fun with it.
Right.
Everything is cool. Everything is funny. Everything is like lively. But that is not the meaning of the picture. That is a way to get into people's minds that, like, here's the U.S. is going to be dominated by Islam, and the words are, and don't forget, like, that's one set of images, and then the words are a completely different set, which is Palestine and the struggle, not mentioning Israel, and the beauty of Palestinian culture, as opposed to some other thing that's not mentioned. And I just thought to myself, wow, this is one heck of an awesome piece of propaganda.
It is certainly well put together. You left out a critical piece that people may be unaware of, which is that the dog, of course, is an archetypical impure animal in Islamic culture, right? It's not an acceptable comparison, right? It's for a Muslim to be compared to a dog is second only probably to the pig, right? So dressing up America as the sort of like the cute but ugly, goofy little dog in the arms. Yeah, I hear it. I mean, without getting into the parshanut, into the analysis of the picture, I think the important piece here is a question that I've had for a long time, which is that who's driving this bus? Who is it that is directing this type of visual narrative warfare? Who has sort of put together this sort of very powerful set of freshman congresswomen who have a certain look, they have a certain style, they've captured the imagination of the American people on issues, by the way, which don't necessarily have to do with, as you're pointing out, this sort of struggle between Islam and the West, since, of course, much of the West is still unwilling to recognize that struggle's going on, right? Let's not forget that most, I think, Americans, I can't speak for the Europeans, but most Americans, I think, you would be labeled as a crazy conspiratist alt-writer if you start talking about sort of like a struggle of civilizations between Islam and the West. Even though anybody who knows anything about history knows that struggle's been going on for, 1,200 years.
Right.
And it's had,
right,
ebbs and flows. But
right, has ebbs and flows, and to the point that also on the Western, let's say, Christendom, they also had their imagery, famously the croissant. The croissant is this food that was created I think it was in Vienna, when the West, when the Muslim incursion was stopped in Vienna. So they created this treat called the croissant, which is supposed to represent the crescent.
They're eating the crescent.
Right. I eat you. I eat you. I beat you.
I'm not gonna have to Snopes you on that one. Are you sure it's true?
Snope away. And I, by the way, recommend everybody snopes away and checks things out, and also comments. Please comment on both any feed that you find right now. It really helps us get the show going. So love to hear from you. Yeah, I was moved by the depth of that picture, and I think that it signals something. The other thing I want to say about that picture is that I think that we underestimate this other war that's happening right now in the world. This cultural, social media war, and the people who understand that it's a war and are fighting it like a war are moving ahead. They are able to get more market share. Market share just means more share in the minds of people, especially young people.
Which translates to resource, political power, economic influence. It's not just sort of attention, right? It's not as my kids say, a battle for Sumi, right? It's for Sumit Lev, right? That's just me, right? No. There are direct, measurable effects of these things in the real world, as we call it.
Absolutely. In a place like Hebron, where I work, we see these young people that are affected by this way of thinking come in and be actual active combatants of one kind or another against Jewish presence at Hebron, and they are moved by the Rashid Tlaib language and verbiage. And she's the Islamic, and she does it so well. She is the Muslim within that crew. She is the she's the Palestine one.
I would say she's the Arab nationalist. It's
right.
Actually Ilan Omar that's the Muslim.
Right, Ilan Omar is the Muslim, but she seems to right. Okay, good. I like what you're saying. So
she's the Arab nationalist,
right? Okay,
and I think it's important to understand that because there's sort of like something for everyone, right? Like the notice what that whole thing is about is that the celebrating the beautiful Palestinian culture. It doesn't say anything about Islam there, right? Nakba Day, the Palestinian struggle. That's an appeal at a very deep level, at a core level of American culture, lies that Wilsonian concept that national self-determination is a sort of an intrinsic right. It's a moral obligation on the United States to create a world in which peoples have this ability for national self-determination. And I think that it's a very important distinction. And so therefore she's not, and because she's not speaking to those for whom the head covering might appear medieval, or it might sort of religion in general has been debunked. No, this is a free people struggling nobly, et cetera, right? Now, what exactly the Nakba is and who would be responsible for the events surrounding our attempt to reestablish ourselves as a people in our land? No. That we don't want to talk about that.
let's just speak it out so that people understand. The word Nakba means catastrophe.
And it was.
Well,
no, it was. No. It was a catastrophe for them. Why it was a catastrophe,
right?
And did it have to be? And
right.
who
and it wasn't
is
was
responsible? It is.
Right,
no, it continues to be. Now
right.
it's an industry. Like I saw someone make the comment that the millions of ethnic Germans that were removed from their homes in the wake of World War II, with the sense that after the Nazi expansion, that there needed to be a little bit of like separation and cooling off period between German speakers and everybody else in Europe. They don't have a Nakba Day. Haven't created a national culture out of refusing to accept responsibility for the past, and as substituting for that a refusal to move forward into the future, right? Even we as a people who certainly mourn our past and are very attached to it, that's only a springboard for building the future, right? So what this sort of beautiful culture that she's offering and celebrating is, I'm not really sure.
Well, she's saying it's a type of Tisha B'Av. It's like we were destroyed, but we will now build our Palestine instead of Israel. We will struggle and we will beat Israel. And
but you know what the difference is, Yishai?
It's a powerful narrative.
But you want to know what the Gilui Milza, what the point of exposure is that on Tisha B'Av we go into our private spaces and mourn. We don't try to get the world on board with Tisha B'Av. We never tried to get the world on board with Tisha B'Av because we understand who's responsible for the destruction of the temple, the first and the second. Ourselves.
Right.
It's true, God sent the Babylonians, God sent the Romans, but in the end of the day, because of our sins, we were exiled from our land. And that very core stance of taking responsibility for our own past is what has given us a beautiful future, a present right now, and God willing, the future will only be more grand. Whereas to create a culture which wants to convince the world that something was done to you, and that the world, therefore, is somehow responsible to rectify what was done to you, is to elevate victimhood to the status of sanctity. And that's why you have to create these memes to draw people in.
But that's a very popular modality right now, the outrage modality, where you're like, I have been wronged, or this person's a wronger, and we're going to out them, and the person who's the outer of outrage or the outer of the bad guy's actions is valued in social media, is valued today.
We've spoken about this. This is what is left of morality in the postmodern world. Because without some sort of narrative which allows you to decide what is right and wrong, good and bad in the world, without getting into where you get it from, it doesn't even have to be some divine narrative. That's not my point. But without some sense of continuity and standard of judgment, all you're left with is the discourse of power, as Foucault will tell you, one of the founding thinkers of the postmodernist world. And in that, we've spoken about it so many times, there are only victims and perpetrators. So therefore, the more a victim you are, the more righteous you are. And that's in the expression of outrage on behalf of the victim is the way in which you can what's called signal your virtue. Right? Whereas we live in a world of heroism. We understand that actually, no, there are more than victims and perpetrators. There are heroes.
Right.
And a hero uses force and power in service of what's good and right. Even though, by the way, there are no perfect heroes. Our tradition is not a tradition of perfect heroes. Everyone from Avram to Moshe to David to you name it, right? Everyone messes up. Everyone reaches the limits of power. Everyone is a gray character on some level because we're real people, right? It's not mythos.
Right. Right. And speaking of heroes, again, today's show is dedicated to Amit Ben Yigal, who was obviously a hero. And the story of his heroism, by the way, is that he was moved by his trip to Poland.
Yes.
He took a March of the Living trip, and he was very moved by the story. And he came back embracing nationalism, Jewish nationalism, in the sense of just what you were saying right now, which is there's an element of defense, like never again, but then taking that and moving it towards let's build something. Yes, let's build defense, but let's also build an awesome country.
Right, as a means to an end. If you're not willing to defend, right? I saw a great quote by John Stuart Mill. Maybe I can pull it up here for myself real quick. Here it is. I used it yesterday in my podcast. He says, war is an ugly thing, but not the ugliest of things. The decayed and degraded state of moral and patriotic feeling, which thinks that nothing is worth war, is much worse. Right? The sense that, oh no, war is the worst thing. Well, nothing is worth war. Well, what that does is it creates a world in which evil flourishes. Right? And I think that Amit Ben Yigal is a great example because I promise you, as much as a hero as he is, if we went through his life and started examining things, he's not perfect. And when his father, Shalom Damizeh, was weeping over his grave and saying that he lost everything, nowhere in his mind does his father think he was perfect. Because you don't need to be perfect to be a hero. All you need to do is, like you said, is to catch fire with an idea which is larger than you and be moser nefesh, be willing to give of yourself in order to make it real in the world.
This young man, Amit, also joined not just a regular army unit, but the kind of one of the most famous of the elite units called Sayeret Golani. Sayeret Golani has a kind of tradition of being just considers itself one of the top of the elite units. And at the same time, it's like a type of elite unit that's used. They use them a lot. They don't just train a lot. They're out there.
It's very active. Yeah.
Right. They're the active folks, and he was in the field, and suddenly blocks got thrown at him. Now in this town next to Jenin, that they were throwing these blocks, and they were trying to arrest some of the perpetrators. There's really been that whole town has been given to an anti-Israel atmosphere altogether. There's videos of just the amount of Molotov cocktails and other things that are being thrown at them. And we see also now in some of the polls that have been taken in a recent article that I saw about East Jerusalem Arabs, that they less and less identify with Israel and more identify with Palestinianism. And I think the answer is very, very clear to me. When you don't demand a kind of loyalty, when you don't also inculcate your culture and your story and your narrative in people who are in your land, but not necessarily, Jewish or would naturally identify with Zionism and Israeliness. But if you don't demand that and you don't teach that and you allow a whole anti-narrative to be taught in those places, in those schools, including in East Jerusalem, you start to lose control of the culture. You start to lose control of the culture, and then you really create a whole class that wants to undermine your rule and wants to rebel against you. And you just haven't done the work of being a sovereign.
It's for sure true. There's also the work of being a sovereign, of owning the responsibility for physical life. Because I'll give you like the flip side example. There's gotten a lot of press in the current COVID crisis has been generated around the fact that a significant percentage of the doctors, nurses, people working in pharmacies, etc., that are on the front lines of this crisis here in our country are Israeli Arabs. Right, and have a complicated. Listen, I don't envy the Israeli Arabs at all. I would only envy them if I was an Arab that lived in any other Arab country. But
right,
but
exactly.
I don't envy them because it's not simple. It's not simple. We haven't been perfect. There's a lot of bad blood. Fine. But why is it that there is a growing identification amongst Israeli Arabs with the project here? If not with the project, at least with the reality. Because they're doctors, nurses, and pharmacists, meaning not only have we sort of communicated to them that this project is a positive thing, we've shown it in reality. There is a missing link that we're ashamed of or we're afraid of that we're not willing to draw, which is to say explicitly, the reason we're able to do this is because we're the Jewish people. The reason we're able to create a culture in which, despite the wars, despite the 100-year war which has existed between our people and your people, we're still struggling and succeeding in building a society where you can rise to the highest levels.
Absolutely.
And it's really only because we're Jewish people.
But you gotta have an embrace on the one hand, and on the other hand, the push back, and those things work together so well. And if you don't allow yourself, I mean, say not everybody's going to become a doctor or a lawyer.
No.
But you allow that class to rise up, great. But you also got to push back on something that, by the way, gives a lot of jihadism, gives a lot of meaning to people who don't have the wherewithal for one reason or another to rise up in society. It gives them purpose. It gives people purpose. It's a fight. There's a fun element to it. You're going to fight. You're going to struggle. You're going to create your thing.
Depth of identity, which is so lacking in so much of the world today. That sense of struggle. It's a redemptive movement in its own way. Right. And don't miss the power of that. But I would say that you're not saying anything other than what I said. You're just showing a different face of it. Meaning the fact that we're the Jewish people means that we have to stay the Jewish people in order to provide that, which means if there are elements within our society that say, no, this can't be a Jewish state, we say to them, you're wrong. First of all, you should know on the face of it, you're a fool, because it's the fact that we're Jewish people and this is a Jewish state that has provided the life that you're enjoying. And second of all, you're wrong, because we're going to fight that battle no matter what, whether you agree with me or not.
Right. And you're not going to win. That actually brings me to another thing. There's a lot being said these days about the bias in the New York Times. There was a New York Times article that had a title. I wish I would have prepared it before the show, but the title went something like this: like Israeli laboratory that
the military lab that specialized in killing is now working on the coronavirus. And a lot of people were very upset about that. But I said to myself, and I said to people, I don't think you're thinking about this right. Israel being tough, or what I have found no better word, sadly, than badass. Okay. That imagery does not bother me so much. Let people be afraid a little bit. Let people be like, whoa, that's a tough state. Like I personally, my take is I wouldn't immediately try to like erase that image. Good. We're scary, and you're going to have to watch out. I call this imagery, I have come up with a word for it actually. It's called Feuer. It's Feuer. Which is very popular.
Which is the best thing in Israeli Hasbara in the last 30 years. Nothing has been more powerful. Watching? Yes, at least a few episodes to understand what it's about. Okay. It's because it's such a brand of what Israel is, and it's become an amazing brand ambassador to what Israel is. And the bottom line message of Feuer is: don't mess. Terrorists have families. Terrorists are nice. They have loves. They have children. They have the whole thing. And if you come with us, we're going to destroy you. That's the simple.
I hear it. At the same time, I think that the insidious element of that type of headline, because I saw it as well,
right? Like a scary bad Jew, like an old classic.
Not even that. Is that bottom line? Jews don't have a right to exist. We don't have a right to defend ourselves, because the military industry's purpose is not killing. The military's industry purpose is keeping the state of Israel alive. It's true that we do that through killing. It is a rough neighborhood, but its purpose, if its purpose was killing, truth is there would be a lot less war in this region.
Right.
We unleashed the Israeli army on everyone. If we actually did the Fauda model you're talking about, we just unleashed the wrath. Right. But like who in this region, even Iran, I think in the end of the day, we would bust a hole in them.
Yeah, for sure. If we went full out, in a week.
That's what I'm saying is that, and so therefore, in that headline is in the end of the day, in the New York Times, from the coverage of the Holocaust all the way to today, has embodied this unfortunate aspect of the Jewish consciousness. Remember, the Jewish consciousness is what they're is that Jews only have a right to exist as victims.
Right.
When we're victims, then we have a moral clarity and a moral rectitude, and we're allowed to exist. But as people who do the messy business of wielding power in order to not just defend ourselves, but to create our vision of the world, no, that we don't do. That's going to do that.
Speaking of victims, speaking of Jews as victims, there's a new Jewish class of victims.
Yeah.
What's that?
Pick your time period. Yeah. Anyway.
But there's a new one right now, it turns out.
Really?
And that is a weird new class of victim, which is American Jewry, victim to the coronavirus, turning to Israel and saying, "You're not helping enough."
Yeah, I've seen a little of that.
I've seen a little bit of that, and it's been oddly surprising. It's been, well, let's just say again what I said last week, and I remind that my mom said this to me. She's like, American Jewry has never felt. This is the first time that they felt less safe than Israeli Jewry. And so this has been a watershed moment on a collective unconscious type level.
And I'll say now what I said then. Come home, people. Come home. As soon as the gates open, don't miss the opportunity.
Right. And by the way, I have a nice banner. Here it is, Building Israel Together. Do you like that? Building Israel Together. That's our little slogan here. Oh, and by the way, if I'm already putting up slogans, let me also put up if you're going to be coming home, please come home and visit us in Hebron, the Jewish community of the mamas and the papas. They're waiting for you at home, and you can learn more about it, see great videos, and connect at hebronfund.org.
They'll ask you why you're not eating enough.
That's right. It's nice to nosh next to the tomb of the fathers and mothers. But anyway, there's this class of folks that are like upset at Israel for not like reaching out more, and this is exactly what I've said all along, that the destiny of American Jewry is to become more and more like a French Jewry or like a British Jewry that exist and they're proud, but at the same time a type of
they're top of
satellite.
What's that? They're subsidiary to the center.
Right. And when there's a problem, they ask the center for help.
Yeah, which is fine. I think that as much as I just made the call for everyone to come home, if you can, that's great. Not everyone can. Not everyone can financially. Not everyone can logistically. Not everyone can because it's just not who they are and where they're at. And thank God we live in a world where there are many ways to connect, right? But this is, it's kind of like, did you see that little tempest in the teacup that happened during the Chiron Tanachi, the Bible quiz, where whoever it was like the director of the quiz or somebody said. No,
it was Avshalom Kor, the famous Hebrew linguist who's been moderating this event for years and years. He's considered the person who speaks Hebrew the best in the country. By the way, he's from an American background. And yes, and that's part of it. That he is a died in the blue. He's died in the Tchelet. That's what I call him. Died in the Tchelet Zionist. And he made these little remarks, mini, tiny, snipey remarks that were like, well, how could you be happy you live in the diaspora? So a lot of people got angry at him, not so much the diaspora, but other Israelis who felt that he was talking down to the diaspora and kind of, what do you mean there's something secondary in terms of the hierarchy of goodness that you're living in the diaspora? That's wrong to say it. And I think he could have said it a little gentler maybe if he had to say it. But the bottom line is that you're right, that people got upset with him.
And I think part of the tension there, and it's interesting, I didn't realize it was mostly Israelis that got upset, is that the power of being in Israel is the power of having a platform to succeed in our mission. If we're not willing to focus on mission, on a collective effort to bring redemption, not just to our people, but to the world as a whole. So like what? Like, live where it works for you in your individualistic life. And that's why, unfortunately, there's a segment of our society, even here today, that would leave, if they could, or at least talks about that as if it were, here or there, Berlin, Tel Aviv, what difference does it make to me? It's because another sort of failure is perhaps a little bit too dramatic. Another place where we're lagging is in digging deeply into our national historic spiritual mission and educating everyone, not just about it as a concept, but activists. Like what are you doing right now to push the project forward?
Right. And that's one of my messages when I'm in front of audiences in America a lot of times, or outside of the land of Israel, which is, what's the step that you take? And that's why I don't only preach Aliyah, because I feel that's the highest of the steps, but there are many intermediary steps that you could take, many steps you could take towards the project, including, as I always say to people, drink Israeli wine, especially Friday night. Buy Israeli wine. Excellent to buy from Judea and Samaria, the so-called West Bank, and drink some good settler wine where you're going to feel that you're walking in the footsteps of the fathers and the mothers and the prophets, and you're part of it, and not because you want to support it, but because you want it in your veins, inside your body. So you want to be part of it. You want it to be part of you. Okay, Rabbi Mike, we've spoken for 30 minutes. Just to remind people, I'm happy to host you today on my Facebook and YouTube page, and on the Yishai Fleisher Show at the Land of Israel Network, landofisrael.com. And we are live. We used to record this before Corona in podcast form, then put it out. Now we are actually live. So that's a lot of fun. And speaking of live, we have some folks that are saying hi. We have Sarah Israel saying shalom, and she's got all cute little signs there, including Star of David, the earth, and a peace sign. Lee Rosen says, great quotation from Rav Mike. You don't need to be perfect to be a hero. Right. Very good. And Ratnawati says shalom, and she also gives the Indian namaste sign, so she may be from those areas. And Casimo says he says 13 viewers, big contents, right? We actually have 21 viewers right now, but big content. Yeah. And also shalom, Shaul says, thank you both from Ma'ale Adumim, one of our favorite places in the land of Israel. Rabbi Mike, that's right. We've been speaking for 30 minutes. Let's get to the Torah portion. We have a lot to cover. Now, let's get to the Torah portion. All right, I'm just picking from the stuff that I picked out here. Number one is I wanted to get to the mitzvah of counting 7 years, 7 times, the cycle of sevens. But just 1 second. Liad says, do you feel my good friend Liad, Rabbi Liad Brody says, do you feel we're putting up a decent fight on social media against these characters like Rashida? I don't think we have I don't think we're the hot social media. That's if you ask me, I don't think we're hot. And I think we're not hot. My opinion is because we're not fully robust and honest. Like, I don't think like we're like if we would be like more like clear what we are, what we believe in, and be like more gritty about it. You know what I mean? But since we always try to like kind of, say it a little bit softer, we're always trying to soften the stances, soften who we really are, soften our position.
Well, we're people of nuance and complexity, and right. it doesn't carry that well in the world of Twitter.
I mean, imagine, and you know what's making me think to do it? Imagine if there was a picture of a lady like Gal Gadot with an Israeli flag draped over her, holding a little dog dressed in a Palestinian flag.
Right.
Can you imagine what that would do?
We get a lot of reactions. Also, by the way, we don't have to go into it now, but whose hand is the dog licking? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, I feel like it's the Euros. That's what I feel like the Euro.
No, I think that blue sleeve is a little indicative of who's actually controlling the dog.
Who? Oh, the Israelis? Yes.
We're going to go for analysis.
All right, good.
You said it. I didn't say it.
All right, here we go. First thing is the Torah portion. Now we're in let me just bring it up so people can see it a little bit. Screen share.
And so you can play a little bit with your
What's
platform
that?
you love. And so you can play with the platform that you love so much.
Yeah, I love it so much. It's true. And we're in the Torah reading for Behar, the Torah portion of Behar. Oh, perfect. There it is right there. Okay, I use when I go to the internet and I want to see Torah portion, I think that Chabad.org does a great job of putting up Torah portion. There are many more commentaries, but they have Rashi right there in Hebrew and in English. And if we go to the verse 6 of chapter 25, it says, Vaita Shabbat ha'aretz. And the land on the 7th year fallow, right? We have this idea of a sabbatical year. the land will have a Shabbat haaretz. It will have a Sabbath of the land, and the Sabbath of the land is supposed to mimic the idea of the Sabbath that human beings need rest on the seventh day. The idea of a Shabbat and recognition that God is the creator on the seventh day. That's a commandment for Jewish people. So too, on the seventh year, the land has to rest. This is one of the premises throughout the whole rest of the two Torah portions that we're going to be covering here. Yes. Is this idea that the land is a persona. It's a personality. It has its own traits. It can take things and not take things, and it needs rest. And it needs a certain kind of rest, and it needs a year for the land to also kind of have a spiritual time. So that's the premise. Now, Shabbat haaretz, I have said that this Corona period has been like a Shabbat haaretz, as though the globe went on a global Sabbath. There's been a global Sabbath, especially in terms of nature.
Yes.
Nature has had a Sabbath from us. Would you say that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the pictures out there have been overwhelming of like animals returning to habitat, the skies clearing in places where people haven't seen the horizon in decades, you know, and it's just one of those things that we just need to keep pointing out that there is no going back to what was. So therefore, if there's something that we found in this enforced confinement that we want to preserve, then it's in our power to do so. You know, but yeah, go ahead.
I just wonder if we're going to speed up to the point that we're going to totally forget this whole period and it's not going to be remembered.
I think people want to, but the reality is first of all, I'm not a believer that we're done. Right. This I see in our society in particular right now, there's a sense of like done. People like the mask is like down below the chin or it's on my hand, and like the buses are filling up, you know, et cetera, et cetera. You know, I don't think that it's going to be that quick. A. B, the economic wave, we have not yet really begun to understand what's happened.
Right.
Once China and the United States, the world's two biggest economies, not to mention what's happened to the European Union, right, are taking the type of blow they're taking, that's like a slow motion wave.
Right. And by the way, interesting that you mentioned China. We have a guest in town right now. Secretary of State Pompeo flew in for a few hours. Hold on, look at this. Here we go. I have one of the classic
Pompeo
wine bottles, and ostensibly, Secretary of State Pompeo is here to talk about actually limiting cooperation with China. That is one of the big topics, ostensibly. That's what news reports are coming out and saying. Along with other things, and probably the discussion about annexation and moving forward with.
And I imagine a little bit of strategic talk about Iran.
Right, and Iran. Okay.
But I wanted to say about the arts.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a very important concept, and this 7x7 cycle, which by the way, we're also now in the time of the Omer counting, which is another annual 7x7 cycle, and so. What does it mean that the land will have a rest that has Shabbat? Because Shabbat, you use that phrase, which is correct, that Shabbat is a time in which we recognize God as creator. But Shabbat is also a time in which we recognize ourselves in the world as something which is intrinsic and not a means to an end. We're not just a doing machine, not even a creating machine. We're a being, right? And you find a sense of wholeness of self, which is not about what you do, but rather about what you are on Shabbat. In the same way, the danger of the relationship to land as a means to an end, that which we use to get what we want, is that it's incredibly destructive. And it will create an economic structure and a culture which will undermine the foundations of its own existence, which is sadly happening in the world today. Whereas Shabbat haaretz is not just about, hey guys, take a break. So just recognize that the land doesn't exist for us. It's not a means to the ends of our needs. Right. It has kedusha, it has sanctity, and the primary definition of sanctity is a thing which has an intrinsic nature, and not just one which is a utility.
I get what you're saying, and I really love it a lot. I want to kind of just say it another way so that some people that maybe didn't quite catch what you're saying is like, it's like being married. It's like the other person's not there to fulfill your needs. That other person is real, that other person has got a life and a personality and a soul, and you got to care for that person. And if mutual needs are met, and they should be in a marriage, that's great. But it's a love, it's a relationship, it's a building, it's a giving back and forth. And what you're saying is sometimes when we're in the mode of utility and we're working the land, and we're working our lives, and like you sometimes forget to like have that relationship, to see the other as a valued thing. And that's what I started with by saying that the Torah portion kind of seems to indicate a few different ways that the land is an entity, it's a persona. If anything, I would say, now that I think about it, there's 3 different ways in which the Torah portion says to you that the land of Israel is a persona. 1, it needs a Sabbath. 2, if you misbehave, it'll kick you out and take its Sabbaths, but it'll vomit you out if you misbehave. And means say it needs a rest. It also does not like idolatry or licentiousness, bad things. It'll kick you out. And 3, towards the end, it says, and I will remember Abraham, I will remember Isaac, I will remember Jacob, and I will remember the land. And the Ema Banim Smecha says, that means to say, even if I can't remember the forefathers, I'm going to remember the land of Israel because I have a covenant with the land itself. The land is also an entity, if you will. People who watch Star Trek, I've said this in other years, people who watch Star Trek have an easier time understanding that a chunk of land will be, have a personality and is a creature, right? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
Tough. Okay, I wanted to get to the next topic, which is, it says in the Torah portion, verse 8, let's just look at it for a second, and let me put it up properly here. This is the way I want to put it up, and here it is. So verse 8, it says, "Usfarta lecha sheva shabbatot shanim, sheva shanim, sheva pa'amim." You shall count for yourself 7 sabbatical years, 7 years, 7 times. And the days of these 7 sabbatical years shall amount to 49 years for you. Fine. Now, why did I want to stop on this? Because when it comes to counting, do you remember last week you said that the time between Elul and Rosh Hashanah is between Elul and the end of Sukkot is a time of personal fixing. You're fixing your personal thing, and then we also have a period that we have a national accountability, a national rectification. This thing here, 7 years. Who is counting 7 years? Is it individuals that are counting 7 years? No, it should be a national goal to count 7 years, right? But it specifically says you individuals should count the 7 years. And when it talks about the 49 days of counting from second day of Passover until Shavuot, till Pentecost, it says you, plural, shall count this. When you would think that it would be something that is specific to individuals because we're doing individual rectification. So here, it's like I want every single individual in the nation to count those 7 years. Our national goals are important on the individual level as well. And the individual is important on a national level as well. Meaning to say the state, the country should not be more important than the individual. You should all count the 49 days that helps individual people get better. That's part of our national identity, every individual person. So I think that the Torah purposefully switches the who's the counter in order to tell you that this is important. This 7 years and 7 times 7 heading towards the Jubilee is important on a personal level and certainly on a national level.
I think it's a critical insight because with the tensions between the particular and the collective that the Torah sort of engages on every front, we really are encouraged to understand that the purpose of society is to allow the individual to enter into relationship with God. But the purpose of an individual entering into relationship with God is to build a better world, right? It's never a sort of narcissistic, like society exists for me as a platform for my relationship, because the only reason my relationship comes to, or let's say the only way my relationship comes to fruition is through the actions in the world that God wants me to do to make the world a better place. So there's almost an iterative process there. So it's a nice insight there. Thank you.
Later on in chapter 25, verse 23, let's look at it together. it says, it looks like I've got to go to Shani here. Just 1 second. 23. Loading it up. Oh, it's in Shlishi, is it? Okay, very good. Yeah, there was a short Shani. Right, the Torah portions are divided into seven parts. So verse 23 says, V'aretz lo timakel mitut, the land should not be sold permanently. For the land belongs to me. Kili haaretz. God says, I'm the actual owner of the land. Ki gerim v'toshavim atem yehudi. For you are strangers and residents with me. That reminds us, of course, of the great phrase that Abraham says when he's purchasing a land. He says, Ger v'toshav anochi imachem. He says, I am a stranger and a resident with you, he says to the Hittites. But here says Hashem, like, look, I want you to follow all these laws, but the bottom line is you can't sell it. You can't mistreat the land. You can't sell it for eternity because it's not yours to sell. One of the key things to understand here is it's my land. You are dwelling with me. It's my land, as opposed to you thinking that it's your land to sell.
And on a certain level, we belong to it because it creates our collective existence, and we're giving the deep expression to the relationship between creator and created that the land in its own right already embodies. It's only humanity that can deviate. You know what I'm saying? It's like creation without us gives expression to the will of the creator flawlessly. So humanity, because of our special gifts and our particular burdens, we're only a segment of creation that can kind of like deviate from that plan. So the whole idea is we belong to the land because the thing that the land can't do without is give that higher articulation of the divine will.
Right.
Right. And on a simple, by the way, I don't want to miss in the sort of spiritual poetics, the very important simple economic assertion here, which is this is what is known in economic terms as usufruct. Right. It's not private property. It's we own the usage of the land. We don't own the land itself. And that does a couple things. First of all, it's just humbling, which I think that the tone of the verse, as you captured nicely, is meant to do. But it also encourages us to build a different type of economic system. And this is the coming wave. It's bound up with the environmental problems that have been created by our current economic system. We need to begin to delve deeply into the Torah and try to understand without some sort of simplistic sense we're just going to recreate what the Torah wants, et cetera. That's not the way our sages related to the Torah. But we need to delve deeply into it to understand what is the real wisdom of how you build a society of justice, of prosperity, right, of equity and vision and growth that doesn't just eat the foundations out from under itself in the way in which we're doing today.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is so important, and you sometimes walk into the bank and you think to yourself, I'm just trying to buy a house here in the land of Israel, and I have to pay through the nose this overpriced what's it called, mashkanta mortgage, and you think to yourself, wait a minute, shouldn't it be that the laws of this land, the Torah, the way we all make money is so to help me grow, and so when I grow, you'll grow, we'll all grow together? Why do I get the sense that you're trying to choke me, as opposed to what the Torah says here? Do not take what's it called, Rabbi? Interest. Yeah. Do not take interest from your Jewish brother and sister. Don't choke. That's like my simple way of reading the whole thing. Don't choke the other residents of the land with you.
Listen, at the risk of sounding like a socialist, the Torah doesn't envision the accumulation of private property as the end goal of economic activity.
Right.
Now, the Torah does allow for private property on the realm of what we call metaltalin, movable goods. Torah doesn't really recognize private property in the realm of land, and certainly in its context, that was the basis of all economic activity. And so this is what I'm saying. So the sort of utopian.
Although it's important to say that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were rich. It's just important to say that the Torah is not against.
Not against wealth, not against prosperity, but it doesn't envision. What you said is that, wait, shouldn't the purpose of this be helping me grow and thrive? Right? I mean, the purpose of economic activity in our current system is to maximize the ability to consume. That is its purpose. That's the structure that we have. And that, by definition, since we don't live in an infinite resource pool, is going to destroy itself. But the Torah envisions more of what you were saying, which is the purpose of economic activity is growth and health and wealth of the individual and society, spiritually, materially, physically, et cetera, right? And that's a different aim, because it would force us as a society to try to identify very clearly what are the primary values toward which we want to work. And then, like what the actual economic system is, it just depends on what works.
I'm going to say something radical. I have said this in conferences, because of my political leanings. So I end up speaking a lot of times on in the conservative world, conservative panels. But I say something that conservatives don't like, American conservatives. I say, look, socialism comes from the word social. And when you have a social fabric, so you're more given to being social. In simple terms, if a girl in Ramat Gan needs a hip surgery and she's my sister, not my actual sister, who's, by the way, listening right now on the show, Rachel Fleisher Vinnick. Yeah. But she's my,
as part of your family.
Right. She's part of my family. And so I want to contribute towards that surgery. Yeah. So you might say that's socialized medicine. Well, yeah. And the Torah seems to say there's certain elements that I certainly want you to be socialized. There are other elements. If you're a person who works harder than other people, and you've got a wherewithal and you've got a business means, sure. You know what I mean? Get what you deserve. But you know
what's beautiful though? The Torah puts at the center of all this, the temple.
Mm-hmm.
It's often missed that the tithing system is a means for conspicuous consumption. Like today, you go on, I don't know, Instagram or wherever, and you'll see the world's richest people consuming conspicuously. It's a big thing. Pictures and yachts and this. But think about the fact that the Torah says now take 10% of your wealth, go to Jerusalem and have a party.
Right.
Right? And because it recognizes that there is indeed a human need which is being fulfilled.
A holy party, though.
A holy party, for sure.
Right.
But there's a human
it's not,
need.
no, because some people hear the word party, they may think you're talking about hedonism.
No. But it is, by the way, it's not hedonism, but the only things you can spend that, what's called Meiser Sheni, when you get in the details, but the only thing you can spend it on are things that people derive pleasure from: meat, wine, oil, right? Meaning the idea is indeed to bring enjoyment, physical enjoyment,
sure,
in a sacred environment, in order to sort of like take that desire we all have to both enjoy the world and to be seen enjoying the world, and to elevate it toward gratitude and sharing.
Right. And it's interesting thing that you said the word seen, and I think I know what you're referring to. There's a mitzvah of lirot ulehiraot, to see and be seen.
Just think about the fact that the only place you can spend 10% of your income is Jerusalem. That's it.
Right.
Everybody.
Beautiful. The reason I'm saying is because I could feel it. People who have been part of coming to Yerushalayim during the 3 festivals can feel it. I had an idea that in Israel we would issue a card, like one of these subway, these light rail cards that we have, Ravkav, that we have in Israel, like a yellow card. And this yellow card would be called a regalim card, and you could amass points on it, and you could only spend that in Jerusalem, and it would help you with parking, help you with restaurants.
That's a great example. Imagine the tax system taking the tithe, if 10%, if whatever,
right,
and it going directly there, and that freeing up Jerusalem to focus on its real mission, which is educating the world in the depths of the human experience.
Right. Beautiful. Love it. By the way, I think similarly, there should be it's such a big thing. You know what I learned? In Saudi Arabia, they have a ministry of the Hajj. A ministry dedicated to the Hajj.
There are 1 billion plus Muslims in the world. I mean, you've got to have somebody in charge.
You got to be in charge, and it's a big thing. So we need a ministry of the Regalim. Or at least under the Jerusalem affairs, it needs to be.
I'm sure in this government, they're more than willing to give it to somebody. They give it to.
Very good. Okay, let's get to some of the most seminal verses in the Torah, especially in this week's Torah portion, and an amazing Rashi there. So we're going to go to chapter 25. 1 second, let me get it set up so we go see it correctly. Chapter 25. And the verses are 38 and on. 38 and on.
Saw it coming.
Yeah.
You're
you bet you did. You bet. So let's just make sure we got 38. Am I there? There it is. Oh, there it is. And give me Rashi, please.
The old-fashioned style here.
What's that? Yeah. That's good. But I want everybody on this that's watching to be able to see it. I have also the book in front of me, but we go to 38, and it says, Ani Hashem Elokechem, I am Hashem your God, Asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, who took you out of the land of Egypt, latet lachem et eretz Canaan, to give you the land of Canaan, liot lachem le'Elohim, to be unto you a God. And says Rashi, to give you the land of Canaan as a reward for accepting my commandments. And that's an interesting phrasing, that you get the land of Israel as a reward for accepting my commandments. And in other places, it'll say the only reason you get to keep the land of Israel is for accepting my commandments. My commandments really only fully are in full fruition in the land of Israel.
Remember, Rashi is most likely quoting the Midrash. I don't know if
right.
I can't see quite, the screen's not big enough, but oftentimes one of the nice things about the Chabad site is that they'll cite the source that Rashi's quoting. But what his language is echoing is schar mitzvah.
Right.
That the reward for mitzvah is the opportunity to do more mitzvot. So when it says, right, that latet lachem eretz Canaan, they give you the land as a reward that we're sort of accepting my mitzvot, and therefore you'll be able to do more mitzvot in the land of Canaan.
Right. The bottom line is in various ways that you could read it. The bottom line is two things are locked into one another: the land of Israel and the keeping of the Torah.
Oh, yeah.
Both of those are, by the way, called morashah. The Torah is called an eternal inheritance, morashah, and the land of Israel is called morashah. It's an eternal inheritance. These things are engaged to one another. They are united. The land of Israel and the keeping of the Torah. These things go together. And notice that the generation that kind of started up the modern state of Israel were a secular variety, and this is a secular state. But more and more, we're moving back to our natural mode of Judaism, which is a land of Israel, which is centered around Judaism, or Judaism that is centered around the land of Israel. Those are both true. But then let's read this very famous Rashi that follows immediately afterwards. It says, "Liot lachem leElohim, to be unto you a God." Shekol. This is a Gemara, right? Ketubot 110b, as it says here in the Chabad page, like you pointed out. It says, "Shekol hadar be'eretz Yisrael." Anybody who lives in the land of Israel, ani lo leElohim, I am to him a God. V'kol hayotze mimena, but anybody who leaves it, ki'oved avodah zarah, is like he serves idolatry. This is a very famous, Rashi quotes this. I think the Rambam also quotes this in a place, but it's a very powerful statement. And Rashi, who's living in Provence, writing this powerful phrase that I am. The Torah says, the verse is, I'm gonna give you the land of Israel, so that I could be a God unto you. Those things are linked. Those things are linked up.
I mean, the Gemara is a little bit more, let's say, judgmental than even what happened at the Bible quiz, in the sense that it's important to remember that God is never an abstraction. And unfortunately, both religion and philosophy lend themselves to the attitude that God's an abstraction. So therefore, I mean, and since God is the ultimate, we just don't even have to qualify that. So, of course, God's the same in Brooklyn as God is in Nairobi, as God is in Jerusalem. That's not a question. The difference is you're not the same. And therefore, the relationship which is available is not the same. And I think it's very specific that this is the general name was, I will be to you as a God. It doesn't say I'll be Hashem. It doesn't say that the particular relationship between the Jewish people and Am Yisrael will be actualized only in the land of Israel. It says I'm going to be actual Elohim, meaning in the land of Israel is where you can engage me through the world, where your actions will show that I am God. You understand the difference I'm making? It's not that someone who lives out of the land by definition doesn't have a relationship to God. It's that there's a specific embodied world-changing relationship which is available in the land of Israel.
I just want to say that what you just said right now is true in the text, but it's also very true in real life. Meaning to say, people who live here know that on so many levels. One of the things that I've learned as I've matured, I'm still trying to mature,
Let me know when that
I've matured.
happens. I'd
Yeah.
like to figure it out.
And when it gets fully gray, the black means I've not yet matured totally. But like, I've realized that truths, when there's a real truth, it is so deep that there are many, many, many levels of analysis, many levels of understanding that are all true.
Yeah.
And
the other way of saying that, by the way, is as you grow, it grows, meaning you discover more in it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You also forget some, sadly, because you sometimes reach great conclusions earlier on and you forget them. But my point too is that the what you just said, that like the land of Israel embodies Torah, and you live in it, you're fully kind of plugged into it, and you feel like, I'm saying it's not just a textual thing. It's if you live here, and you might even be secular, and you might be Haredi, or you might be, I don't know what, you feel that there's a God in this land. By the way, some people complain about the city of Jerusalem, that it's very intense. I've heard that many times.
It's quite intense.
And that intensity is not in any fast or dangerous traffic, or there's nothing ostensibly so intense about it.
No. But
there is something there. It's a live wire.
Yeah, just life is very intense there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just intense and intense. And I personally found that there was no other than the only similarity that I found was New York City, Manhattan. Interestingly, by the way.
There, the intensity, I think it has a different root.
Right. Absolutely. But I just mean to say it's hyper intense. It's it's a pole in this world. I called it a long time ago. Israel's the spiritual superpower, or in that case, it's the capital of spirituality is Jerusalem. All right, we got to start heading towards the end. So I want to get to a few more verses. Let's get to the good news. There's wonderful promises for the Jewish people if they follow the Torah, if they follow God's ways in the land of Israel. And there's a lot to say there, but let's just go to verse chapter 26. We've now skipped to the next Torah portion, excuse me, which is Bechukotai, and let's hit verse 11 of chapter 26. Let me just pull it up on the screen here, and there it is. Okay, one of the greatest blessings of them all. V'natati mishkani b'tochachem. I'll give my dwelling in your midst, which is either the tabernacle or the temple. That's a higher level in your midst. V'lo tigal nafshi etchem. My spirit will not reject you. Or another modern way of saying it is, I won't be grossed out by you.
Am I going to spit you out?
What's that?
Well, as Rashi says that kol ge'ilah lashon pleita davar abalua b'davar, right? Meaning it's an expunging. That's why.
Right. The old vomiting. The land will vomit you out. Right. And God is how should we say? He's holy, and He's not going to withstand our unholiness to walk amongst us. Although, luckily, there are also verses that God says, even in your bad times, I'm with you. Even when you're low, I'm with you.
Well, when it comes specifically regarding the Mishkan, Shocheni etchem toch tumatchem, that dwells amongst you even in the midst of your impurity. Right,
but that's a kindness. That's not the highest level. The highest level is here, like that you'll be a holy people, and I can walk amongst you. And it says exactly that. V'hitalachti b'tochachem. I shall walk amongst you, or within you, even within every single one of you. I will be within you. V'hiti lachem le'elohim. I'm going to be unto you a God. V'atem tiyuli le'am. And you will be a nation unto me. You'll be my people. Such a powerful phrase. And of course, when we hear the word hitalachti about God, when I walk amongst, we of course remember the Garden of Eden, and there it is. Rashi says, "Etayeli machem began Eden kechad mikem." I'm going to walk amongst you as I was almost one of you. V'lo tiyu mizda'azeim mimeni. You won't be shocked from me. I'll put you on such a level that you'll be able to deal with me, like Moses. Yachol lo tiru mimeni. Could it be that you won't fear me? God forbid. No. Talmud Lomar, therefore it says, Va'iti lachem le'elohim. I'll be unto you a God, meaning to say you'll still fear me and respect me, but I'll be close to you. I'll be able to deal with you. You'll be able to deal with me. Can I use that kind of modern phraseology?
Sure, go for it. I mean, you just did.
Right. So, would you say that is the penultimate of?
That's the purpose. And going back to one of the themes that's been flowing through our conversation so far was that is that without a sense of what it is you're trying to achieve, then your actions will at best be harmless. Whereas if you have a sense of what the vision you're working toward looks like, then even if you're challenged or you suffer failures, etc., in the end of the day, you can keep that for momentum. And so one of the reasons I think this is the highest blessing is we can understand that the vision that the Torah puts forward of the purpose of the Jewish people is to connect heaven and earth, right? And every individual has a chance to do that within their own heart and their actions, but we have a special grace as a people, as a nation, to do it on behalf of all creation, right? That's why God says to Avram that Lecha me'artcha mo'atichem beit avicha el haaretz asher arecha, like go leave everything you know to the land I'll show you, and what I'll make you there, what a goy gadol, a great nation, not a great person.
Right.
Avram was already a great person, or God wouldn't have reached out. The vision is that there should be a people as a whole who have a capacity to connect heaven and earth in a way in which the whole world can benefit. And that's really what I see in this verse.
And you mentioned Abraham, which is the great transition to the last verse that I want to cover today, which is verse 42 of chapter 26.
Right.
Right. And the chapter the verse says there, V'zacharti et briti Yaakov, I will remember my covenant with Jacob, v'af et briti Yitzchak, and my covenant with Isaac, v'af et briti Avraham, and my covenant with Abraham. So it goes in reverse order. Eskor, I will remember my covenant with Abraham, v'ha'aretz eskor, and I'm going to remember the land. And this is a wild Rashi that says that 5 places in the Tanakh is Yaakov's name spelled with this extra vav, so as to make a Yaakov. But we just have we don't need that vav. We just have a grammar law that makes it Yaakov without it. And at the same time, there are 5 places in the Tanakh where Elijah's name, is written in short form. Very famously, at the end of the Tanakh. Right. Oh, Sefer this is at the end of Nevi'im, right? Thank you. And so it's Eliyahu, but spelled short, in a short way. Says Rashi, Yaakov took these vavs from Elijah as let me read it in the English. The 5 instances of the vav symbolize the 5. Oh, wait, where's that? Oh, no. It says the 5 places. Jacob took the letter Vav from the name of Elijah as security, collateral, that he will come and herald the redemption of Jacob's children. And they add in parentheses from the Gur Aryeh, and since this is Elijah's mission in life, his name will remain incomplete, as it were, until he fulfills it speedily in our days. The 5 instances of the Vav symbolize the 5 fingers of the hand. This security arrangement between Jacob and Elijah was sealed by a handshake. Interesting. Okay.
You're not doing handshakes anymore. No more.
Right. It was just a nod. It was a nod. But the point is that hidden in that promise that God is going to remember the forefathers and the land is also a hidden promise of redemption that will come when Elijah the prophet will herald the Messianic period, the Messianic times.
Well, I mean, you can do your homework, but in my reading, Zechirah, what we translate as remembering, when it's said in reference to God, is always a redemptive power.
Mm-hmm.
Every single usage.
Mm-hmm. Right. I could see that with Noah, with Rachel, etc., with Sarah. These are all Rosh Hashanah. We have the Zechirot, and we also actually say these 6 Zechirot in the end of davening. Sometimes, some people do anyway. This Torah portion, if we summed it all up, is really about the laws of the Jewish people in the land of Israel, keeping the land in sanctity, being and having real security coming from the maker of this world. We didn't touch so much about it, but v'shechatem levetach, you're going to lay in security. Why? Because you followed my laws, and I'm your protector.
Because these are the laws of the society as a whole, because you built a world in which I can dwell, and that's what makes you secure.
Before we go, Rabbi Mike Feuer, I just want to read a few of the comments. Says Stanley, he says, what do you do in terms of tours for Gentiles? The answer is, come on down.
Whatever you're looking to see.
Yeah, like we're here to teach and people who are open-minded and want to hear about our history and about the Torah and about God's promise to Abraham and the purchase and all that. Just come on down. We are equal opportunity teachers, so please come on down and we'll keep it 100% open to you. We are not going to limit it from our Gentile friends, but of course, come to listen, not to preach some other form. Says Zara Israel says, yes, it is a Shabbat for humanity and our earth. It is also humbling. She's talking about the coronavirus. I'm going to move on. There's my sister. She says, great stuff again. God bless you. My sister Racheli. Jay says, awesome stuff. Stanley says, great talk. And then we got here's somebody very important, all the way from Sweden, says Erica from Sweden. Her last name is Nordstrom. I like you already. I feel like I'm back in Bergenfield. Erica from Sweden says, shalom, great comments, rabbis, as usual. Blessings to all of you. Shalom and blessings to you, Erica from Sweden. Thank you so much for joining us and keep on being connected with us, please. I also want to say, Lou says, excellent share and insights. Thank you, Yishai and Rav Mike. And says Stanley, thank you. We shall come with listening ears. Amen. Amen. And let's last one says Yehudi. Zara says Yehudi has all four letters of our Creator's name with the addition of the Daled, which is a door. Daled is like a delit, which is a door. This inspires awe. So there you go. Folks from around the world are connected to us, Rabbi Mike, and I want people to check out all the stuff that you're doing. You just put out a great podcast that I am so excited for, which is about the prelude to the 6-day war. I'm totally psyched for that.
We're slowly there. It's going to take some time.
I'm psyched for the prelude. I like Malk and I. We like the lead ups, in the movies. Yeah, not when it's like the big stuff is happening, but the lead up, the build up, the training, the whole thing. So we're excited for that. Please check out Rav Mike's website, jewishstory.co, his other show on the Land of Israel Network, which is called jewishstory.com, the Jewish Story. And also Rav Mike is found at Facebook, facebook.com/Rav Mike. Did I miss anything?
Nope, that'll do it.
That'll do it. Good. We're learning the Torah portion of Behar-Bechukotai. And help us please keep broadcasting by visiting YishaiFleisher.com/donate. Buy a cup of coffee. Great way to support broadcasting. I don't even say podcasting anymore because now we're doing it in different forms. And again, I recommend that. What's that?
So we're way beyond that.
We're way beyond that. We're doing it real live, real time and live. And of course, also check out
now.
and check out Hebronfund.org to visit the fathers and the mothers. Rabbi Mike Feuer, thank you so much for joining me. I want to wish you a Shabbat Shalom. God bless you. God bless you. Shabbat Shalom. And thank you for coming on. And thank you, folks, for being with me. Lots of love from the land of Israel. Lots of blessings from the land of blessings. And please don't be embarrassed to throw out an email, Yishai@thelandofisrael.com or Yishai@YishaiFleisher.com. Also very good, YishaiFleisher.com. And just finishing up, Bill says shalom from Tulane, Illinois. I don't know how to pronounce that properly, but hi, Bill from Illinois. Shalom. Erica says we met in Tisha B'Av 2017. Baruch Hashem, let's meet again. And Marie says shalom from the UK. So it's so beautiful to be able to connect to people around the world and connect over what? Over a love of the land of Israel, a love of Torah, and a love of others who want to connect on these beautiful and holy levels. So Shabbat Shalom, everybody. God bless you. And of course, write me an email, Yishai@thelandofisrael.com and Yishai@YishaiFleisher.com. You take your pick, whatever connects, whatever suits your fancy. But more than anything, brachot, blessings from the land of Israel, and shalom.